Hey, this is Steve Baltin. You are here on My Turning Point, where this week I am so honored to be joined by Brandon Flowers and Ronnie of The Killers to talk about their brilliant new album, Pressure Machine. Really interesting conversation talking about their literary roots, going back in time to Nephi, Utah, how COVID allowed them to change their sound a bit, live plans for the album, U2, Bruce Springsteen, so much more. Really informative and fun conversation, so hope you enjoy this one as much as we did. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good, man.
You know, it's so funny. I was just thinking about how this shit is so weird because, you know, the last time we met was at the Sunset Marquee. It was actually in person. So now, of course, you know, we have this new world. It's funny. I just did an hour with Jackson Brown, right? We were both fully vaccinated. It never, ever, ever came up the possibility of actually meeting in person. It was just never discussed.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot easier though, too. I mean, you probably don't have pants on right now, and neither do we. It's just the ease of moving from room, you know, you don't have to, you got a bowl of cereal there. It's just convenient. I actually like it. I don't mind it.
Oh, dude, I do too, because I live in Long Beach. So not having to drive to LA is freaking awesome.
No.
I'm wearing actually workout shorts because I did work out. So I'm wearing workout shorts. But it's so where are you guys right now?
Provo.
We're Provo, Utah, at a great studio at a friend of ours called June Audio. We've done some things here before, and it's a nice meeting point.
All right. So many things I want to talk with you guys about. First of all, the album is fucking amazing. It is absolutely incredible.
Thanks.
So we're going to come on to that in 1 second. But, you know, this is so funny. I think sometimes, too, I don't know about you guys, when everything just gets too heavy, you kind of just want to lighten the mood for a second. And I was looking up the name of the track that you guys did with Bruce, who's my favorite artist of all time, by the way. And the second thing that comes up is, what is Bruce Springsteen's net worth? And I was just laughing at the absurdity of the internet. Last night, my friend and I were Googling something. I think it was COVID related about, like, can people get it a second time after vaccination or something, right? But the first thing that popped up was, can people with tattoos get to heaven? That was literally the first thing that popped up in Google search after can people. So let's start with, what's the weirdest shit you've seen pop up in Google search?
I had something like that today. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
It was really weird. Hold on. It's funny that you say that. There's this quote. Okay, I don't know if we want this printed or not. So there's this quote in a Flannery O'Connor book about that the misfit is like challenging this family, and he's about to shoot the grandma, and he talks about Christ, and he says, like, what if he didn't raise the dead? And I was trying to find it because I have a little bit of a reference to it in our song Cody. And so I typed, what if he, and the answer was some crazy thing about, like, what if he didn't ejaculate inside me was what the main thing was.
So is that like an aggregate of what people are searching for? Is what?
Yeah. If you,
is it timely? Is it like date?
Yeah. It's like, or the most things.
Wow.
And why are you doing it right now?
There's some girls that didn't have obviously that didn't have the proper sexual education.
What if he did?
Well, apparently, here it is. But there's a lot of people who got a lot of guilt too.
Where is it? Can you see it? It's what if he didn't ejaculate in me? That's the main text. That's the main one.
Well, click on it. What's it say?
It's girls that want to know if they can get pregnant if he it's from pre-com and stuff.
Yes, it's very difficult.
Okay, here we go. Sorry, here we go. Anyway,
no, that's all right. That's it. It's like I said, sometimes, you know, I mean, here in LA, you know, shit is absolutely crazy with COVID again. And I think sometimes you just want to lighten the mood, you know? And I'm assuming you guys, by the way, never asked Bruce what his net worth is.
No. What is it? What does it say on the internet?
Well, according to the internet, it's 500 million. But, you know, as a writer for Forbes, I'm going to tell you that's probably not even close.
Damn, it's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. But, you know, I love the fact that, by the way, that you referenced Flannery O'Connor, because where I wanted to start with this was, I'm sure you've been asked 8,627 times about the musical references on this album. And it's such a literary album. I mean, for you guys, was there a sort of turning point, starting moment where you realized, and, you know, it's also fascinating to me because I've done so many interviews during COVID, and it messed with artists' minds in good ways and bad ways. Like, you know, you have time to think about shit that you've never thought about because you haven't had downtime. So was there sort of a turning point moment or song that took you back to Nephi, Utah?
Yeah, it's actually a song that's not on the record. It's a song called Boy. And I was experimenting with how I felt, and I felt sort of isolated and like an outcast in this little town when I was 15 years old. And then it was funny. I found it difficult to leave once I went there mentally. And then all of the songs started becoming about that place. And it wasn't until later that we really fully committed to that idea. And I started thinking of some of my favorite books. So something like The Pastures of Heaven from Steinbeck, where it's all these short stories, but they're all in the same valley. Or Sherwood Anderson has one that's called Winesburg, Ohio, and it's all these different short stories, and they're all in Winesburg. And it was like, what if there was an album like that? And that is where it started.
Well, I think obviously the subject matter as well lends itself to how different musically it is. And I love sort of the subtlety of some of the songs. And I mean, Ronnie, for you, how much fun was it to get to sort of move into this twang? And, occasionally all of a sudden now, when you have this sort of Steinbeck subject matter, it lends itself to a little bit of Hank Williams sound, stuff that you guys wouldn't have done before.
I'm totally 100% into it. In fact, it's funny, Steinbeck just keeps coming. I just finished Travels with Charlie yesterday. So that's topical on my mind. I love shit like that. I love a focused idea. I also love doing things differently. It's fun for us. You found ourselves in this very unique situation along with everyone else on planet Earth, and just used our time and opportunity and our bubble as best we could in the most productive way. As he was going down a path, I remember getting a text from him. He said, "It's just, it's a little weird or something like, but would you help follow me down on this one?" I was like, "Yeah, 100%." And I'm familiar with Nephi, Utah, and we pass it every time we drive from Vegas to Utah or from California sometimes. I know about it. I was somewhat familiar. I didn't live there, but so I was down to have this like focused musical interpretation of this town and these stories.
Well, it's so interesting for you because that makes it a really good litmus test for you as well, Brandon, because look, obviously very few people probably have lived in Nephi, Utah. So if Ronnie can't relate to it, then it's like, okay, well, maybe this is a little too, sort of isolationist. But Right. It's like, again, I think that, as you're telling these stories, obviously, whether it's a great writer, be it a Steinbeck or a Sherwood Anderson, or whether it's a Springsteen or a Tom Waits or, a great musical storyteller, they have to take you into a place that you can identify with, whether you've ever been there or not. So was there a moment for you guys early on where you realized that, okay, because look, you can have a concept too, but obviously this is so personal to you because you grew up there. So was there sort of a moment early on where you realized that, hey, this really was working and that this was an album that, even if you're living in Indonesia and you've never heard of Nephi, Utah, you still can identify with the feelings of isolation, the feelings of loneliness, and the feelings of outcast, and just the feelings of not fitting in that are expressed in these songs.
I think so. I think a terrible thing was one of those moments for sure, because it's our most austere, our most stripped back song that we've ever done, and it was still like resonating. It's not your typical. We've grown into this, stadium band and arenas, and there's this loudness that's expected. So it felt, I had a little bit of trepidation going that quiet and that small, but then there was the power in it and we could feel it. And it was an exciting moment to know that we could do this and that we can try to see this idea through. But
that's interesting.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I do think a lot of people can identify with that feeling like an outcast, and feeling isolated. And so it doesn't matter, like you said, if you're in Indonesia or not. And then the other thing which you guys were talking about was the instrumentation really helps bring you into that place. And that was where the fiddle and the harmonica and the pedal steel really, I think, help kind of like lure you into the town.
Occidental music.
Well, it's interesting because what you just said about, how it's the most stripped down song, but it still has power. Tom Morello and I have talked about that a lot, right? When he did Night Watchman, and he comes from one of the loudest freaking bands in the history of the world. And then you go up with an acoustic guitar. And to me, the greatest punk album of all time is John Lennon Plastic Ono Band, because even though it's acoustic, dude, you don't find anything that hits harder than that record. So it's interesting for you guys, talk about as you started going into Pressure Machine, realizing this sort of the power of the quiet. And I think it's also something, look, for every artist, as you get older, you want to try different things. And you also realize all of a sudden that, oh my God, it doesn't need to be, in Spinal Tap turns termed up to 11,
That's been on our radar for a long time. We've always wanted to show restraint. It's difficult for us to do that. But we really felt like if something, the Getting By and Terrible Thing and Desperate Things and a Pressure Machine, the song itself, really, we were able to do something that we haven't been able to do. And I think as horrible as COVID has been, that was one of the silver linings for us, was being able to explore this new territory. And it's always been a part of us. It's just we haven't found the right outlet yet, and so we're really happy with it.
It's like that point of being being on the edge of a really slippery, tall slide that you're a kid and you don't want to go down, and then the foot of COVID kicks you down the slide that you wanted to go down.
All right, so now that you've gone down the slide, this is interesting too, because you've already announced a show here in LA at Bank of California Stadium. What are the ideas for being able to merge these songs in? I feel like this is an album that, and I'll go back to Springsteen because, I got to see him at the Wiltern on Ghost of Tom Joad. Will we see the stripped down killer shows at the Ace Theater or something like that?
I think we have to, we've been doing a couple hours of Zoom interviews so far, and everybody brings that up. Like, how are you going to weave this vibe into the bombast that is a killer show? We're still trying to figure that out, but I think at some point we have to do, a Wiltern or a Fonda or something like that, where we go in and we just do the album top to bottom with a pedal player and strings and horns and that type of thing. Being able to sort of architect the emotional arc of a big ass show and stick these songs in there, it could also be a fun task, whether we build a small little stage somewhere where we do a few of these songs or something. We're still working it out.
Well, it's interesting then for you guys, when you think of how you would incorporate it, since people have been asking you all morning, are there artists that you look at that are sort of role models for being able to do that? And I think of you too also, they do a good job of, they'll do like a little, sort of a circle stage in the middle of playing Dodger Stadium or the Rose Bowl or something and do a small set. So are there artists for you that sort of you appreciate for the way that they've been able to merge the two worlds together?
Yeah, that is how you skin the cat. We're trying to figure that out. U2 is a big one for us, and how they're able to do that is astonishing. It's really cool to see, and hopefully we can do something like that someday.
That also brings up another interesting question for both you guys. As you start to do this too, and now that you've explored this different sound and the pedal steel and, gone back into sort of the country, twang and everything, another thing too is, and also this comes out of COVID as well, is look, like Jackson Brown and I were talking about, you might have songs that you haven't played in a while that you miss, and you realize that you, as he put it, you relearn them. So are there songs for you guys that you also now think about, like, all right, it'd be cool as shit to just do something totally different with, fill in the song, the way that Eric Clapton, who's now an anti-vaxxer, so no longer a huge fan, but, I do love Eric Clapton, but, I think the way that he redid Layla is probably still like the benchmark for taking a classic song and just, totally redoing it. Because as he put it, he's like, we're going to have to do it for the rest of our lives. So clearly you guys are going to have to do When I Was Young, Mr. Brightside, some of these songs. So are there any songs from the catalog that you're just like, you know what, dude, we're going to take it. We're going to throw a pedal steel in there, or we're going to do an acoustic, or we're going to do a samba version or whatever it is.
Yeah, we started playing with that back in 2010. I think we did like our first time playing Human at Abbey Road was different. We Human for us, or at least for me, it was always sort of a campfire song, just in disco clothes, And so
we did it like Traveling Wilburys.
Yeah, we did it. We did it in more of a Wilburys or a campfire style thing, and we still sort of play around with that. We've done Brightside a few different ways during the stay at home order. We had to do some online shit, and I remember us doing Brightside a couple different ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, we sort of adapt and willing to try some things out, and probably do the same for our smaller sounding songs. We can jump them up as well.
Damn.
But I love the fact that you guys just referenced Traveling Wilburys, because that's not a name that comes up at all. So now I've never asked this question, but all right, who would be in your version of the Traveling Wilburys 2022?
Oh boy, it's kind of like the other one is the Highwaymen. The Highwaymen, and both are like, those are the two best supergroups.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who would be the Traveling Wilburys though? That is like heavy hitters. I don't know if anybody's heavy enough to even. It'd be like.
Well, for you guys, the band that you would want to put together your supergroup,
Yeah.
Man, it would be like, it would have to be like people who are a bit more established. I think it would have to be like Eddie Vedder and Dave Grohl. And those sort of the next people in line.
Yeah.
Anybody in our sort of lineage we still got 20 years to go.
That's interesting you say that, though. It's funny. And I talk about this with bands all the time, it's interesting you say you still got 20 years to go, yet you already have anthems. You've already headlined stadiums. I mean, so does there become a point where you feel like, all right, like... I think for every artist is a perfectionist, right? So every artist is never satisfied. And that's the key is to, I remember talking about it with Don Henley once, and I asked him about having 2 of the 3 biggest selling albums of all time. And he's like, I never think about that, because that's when it really screws with your head. So, but for you guys, have there been those moments where you can look back and say, all right, we're getting closer to where we want to go? And by the way, this can also tie in very artistically with what you accomplished on Pressure Machine, like where you start to find your voice and say like, okay, cool. This is who we want to be going forward, because we can incorporate these 2 sounds together.
I think a glance to look back is okay, but I think looking back and getting your head out of the game is a bit like being in a fight and thinking about, the dinner with your wife as you're in the ring. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't do that yet.
Yeah. We're finding, we find it. I don't know if everybody. I don't know. You talk to more artists than we do, but it just seems like Ronnie said, a little bit risky, and you see the people that get too comfortable and how their music suffers and so we're definitely cautious of that, and we still have quite a bit of fire in our bellies.
Well, it's interesting too. Then, I mean, this is a perfect album to sort of tie into that for you guys as you have this opportunity. And, that's another thing that came about, right? Is, typically there's not time, as you say. That's a blessing of COVID. And I mean, whether I was talking with, David Guetta, who was doing, he's like, oh shit, this is the first summer vacation I've had with my kids in 12 years. Or Lucas Nelson talking about having dinner, with Willie and Mom for 4.5 months. COVID changed everybody's lifestyle. So for you guys, do you feel like now that you have this opportunity to do this for Pressure Machine, like, is there sort of a moment in there that you're like, oh, okay, cool, looking forward? I guess look, as an artist, you're always using things as building blocks and where you want to go. So are there particular moments or sounds or lyrics on this record that you're like, okay, this is a departure for us, but we're going to continue to use this going forward?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely every record, I think we find, little ledges of rock that we can keep climbing to get to the top of our own mountain. You know what I mean? I even see it, sort of a bit like an outsider looking in, but just seeing Brandon and his progress lyrically and how thoughtful he's become and stuff. And that's not something that, he's not going to write "Somebody Told Me Again." You know what I mean? He's gotten to a place that's much, much higher now. And it's not like he's going to go down the mountain, And I think you could say that about every part of this machine that we call the Killers. I think we sort of, hopefully will keep ascending and finding new things about ourselves along the way.
Well, this is interesting too, right? Because I haven't asked specifically about the writing, but look, I mean, good writing is subconscious. It dictates itself. And then you go back and you look at it and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even know I was thinking that. Mm-hmm. So when you go through this record, are there things that emerge that you're like, I didn't know that I even remembered that from being 14 years old in Nephi or 16 or whatever? Were there things that emerged that really surprised you?
Yeah, the one thing that keeps coming back to me is this grief that I had for a couple that got hit by a train. They were seniors when I was in 8th grade, and I just, of course, if you brought it up, I'd remember it. But until I was going to put my thoughts and my memories of it to a song, I didn't realize how emotional and how much I hadn't dealt with it. You know, for 25 years, it's just been walking around with me, you know, and when I really opened up and sang it was this like flood of emotion, and I just couldn't believe it was there. You know, I barely knew these kids, but it left a mark on the town, and it left a mark on me.
Like regressive hypnosis.
It's crazy.
That's so interesting. I mean, when you look at it, and not trying to turn this into a therapy session, but it's just fascinating to me. I mean, was it just your first experience with death, or can you look back on it now and understand why it had this deep impact on you? Because
we moved to that town to escape, you know, crime, and you know, and you think that it's going to be, you know, everything is squeaky clean, and it's not supposed to happen, this kind of thing. And you know, the guy she was a beautiful girl, and he was on the football team, and they had a baby, and it was just it just shook the town, and so I had, and his, you know, the boy's sister was in my grade, and watching her deal with this, and so it was just it really stayed with me.
Interesting. So for you guys, we'll wrap up on this because I don't know how we're doing on time, but I think we only have a couple minutes left. But for each of you, right, we talked about playing this album start to finish, right? Are there one or two songs? Because the other thing too is, right, it has the sound. You can change it. You can evolve it, whether you bring the pedal steel on and all this, you know. And obviously, whether you're incorporating songs into the big stadium show or doing, you know, the Wiltern or the Fonda, there are songs that you're going to be able to change and expand live. And also, of course, when an audience hears them, it totally changes them. So are there songs from this record for each of you, like one or two that you're most excited to do live and to see how they evolve and change and what an audience brings to them?
I feel like In the Car Outside, it just has a heat to it. And that I feel like it could just sit nicely in a live set. Quiet Town also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I keep thinking about because everybody brings this up about doing a show.
Yeah.
Of just a complete record about like creating this really small sort of universe, bringing the people in to actually do the interstitials.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Have them come on tour with us too. The townspeople, find them and have them, you know, re-narrate their parts. Be fun.
Cool.
Sorry, was that out loud? Sorry about that.
It's all right. Yeah, it does actually prompt another interesting question. So what kind of response have you gotten from people who live in Nephi, Utah now that you've started talking about this and doing press? I mean, you know.
Yeah, no, it's wild because I know they aren't sure what to think or what angle we're approaching the album, because it do come from a lot of love for the town, but I also am, you know what it was like to be an outsider in the town, and there's a lot of different emotion kind of running through the record. So I think I think they're gonna like it.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. Who, you know, here's a band writing about a little town in Utah we were just there, and it's, you know, it's a tight group of people, and they're happy people. It's a really, you know, and it's their town. It's like its own little universe, and I hope that people will realize that like any place, it's got dynamics. You know, there's peaks and valleys, right? And
all right, so last question, because I'm sure, Jen, we've got to wrap up, but this is interesting to me, right? As I'm thinking about this, look, there is an incredible lineage of great art about Outkast, and I'm not just thinking music. Actually, it's funny. I can't even think of the right song right now, but whether you go back from, you know, Rebel Without a Cause and Catcher in the Rye to the film Stand By Me. So for each of you, what is the greatest sort of work of art of alienated youth?
Alienated youth. There's I think probably I grew up with on the Smiths. So Morrissey was kind of a virtuoso at writing about alienation. And so I would think of songs like Half a Person. There's a song called Half a Person by the Smiths that pretty much encapsulates it. Yeah, for me. Alienated youth.
Or Outcast or whatever it is, however you want to describe it.
Fucking Goonies.
Yeah, it's good.
Goonies.
I grew up. I was sort of the weirdo in the school. I left Las Vegas for 2 years, from 86 to 88. And when I came back, I was in junior high school, and those are crazy years. And I was skateboarding and listening to punk music, and I was different. I got beat up every day, and it was crazy. So I remember sort of being a bit of an outcast. And then people found out I played drums and playing music and stuff, and I became still an outcast, but I wasn't getting beat up as much. Yeah, it reminds me of my youth a little bit talking about that.
Yeah. Oh, it's just funny. I think everybody goes through that experience. Look, anybody who's different at all goes through that experience.
Yeah. Is that true?
Well, as someone who, as you said, talks to a shit ton of artists. And by the way, just for clarification, not trying to name drop at all. I just talk to people who are way smarter and way more interesting than me. So that's why I quote them, because they know a shit ton more than I do.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. That's good.
Cool. I know we got to wrap up. What do you guys want to add? I did not ask you about.
Nothing much. That's good.
No, you're great. Thanks for taking the time. We love doing interviews with you. So I don't know.
Well, the feeling is definitely mutual. So yeah, always a pleasure anytime. Like I said, it's a great record too, man. I really love it. And I can't wait till you guys do it start to finish in a small venue.
Yeah.
We'll go to Long Beach.
Long Beach is awesome, by the way. Yes. Where would you do it?
I love the LBC.
My mom.
Where would you do it in Long Beach?
My mom was born in Long Beach in 1947. Let's see. I don't know any venues in Long Beach. You have to tell us the theater.
Well, if you did it at Alex's Bar, it would be a little. I did see both Sarah McLachlan and Melissa Etheridge at Long Beach Terrace Theater.
Sarah McLachlan is so bad. Yeah.
No, she's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really underrated, still. Like those songs hold up so well.
Yeah, it's like we forgot about Sarah McLachlan.
Never forget.
Fucking awesome.
Well, I think everybody forgot about her because she's like, screw this, I'm done, dude. I'm going to go have a life and hang out at home and,
We saw her a few years back. She came backstage.
Oh, yeah, in Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see her, and we were just like, we were a little awestruck. She's such a great songwriter. Such a great voice.
Oh, my God. Except for, however, her songs are now ruined, of course, because every time you see them, you think of fucking sick animals.
All right.
And for me, I can't deal with that. So, but I love her as a person. She's awesome. I know we got to wrap up. You guys, this was a pleasure. Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Steve Baltin. You have been listening to My Turning Point with The Killers. Thanks.